We know the move from McLaren to Mercedes for Lewis Hamilton was his best career choice he's ever made. And what I'm doing today is I'm going to be looking at Hamilton's Mercedes career, maxing it out completely, see how many more titles and wins he could have got. I mean, he's already got basically half the titles he could have won anyway. But just to see how much more he could have possibly got, I did make a part one of this with him at McLaren, so I should definitely suggest you go watch that before you watch this one. I just cover all of his McLaren career, everything he could have done, all the titles he could have won, and I think there's quite a lot of things that would surprise you, so definitely check that out before you watch this one. If you have watched the first part, I appreciate that. And I'm going to go through a quick recap of the format we're going to be going with. We're looking at every Grand Prix where Hamilton lost out on a result due to a crash that wasn't his fault or some sort of mechanical failure, basically where he lost out on a big result, say like a podium or a race win. So now that's clear, let's get straight into it. It's 2013. Hamilton's move to Mercedes has shocked the whole Formula One world. No one ever saw it coming. We all thought Lewis would just stay at McLaren for his whole career, you know, because he was successful enough. Maybe it could have been better. Of course, in our actual universe, it was one title, 20 odd race wins. Of course, it was the poor reliability, the inconsistency, the bad pit stops, the team just not being fluidly fledged together, ready to win championships. It just wasn't a place you could win titles because it just was a mess. It just wasn't that full package, which of course a driver needs to win the title. They need a good teammate, they need a good boss, they need a good team around them. Of course, they need a good car. So Lewis jumped ships to Mercedes for 2013 to partner his childhood friend Nico Rosberg. It was a dream come true for the newly founded teammates. You know, they were always racing each other throughout go-karting. They were like best mates and everything. They were loving life, you know, and now they're in the same team. You know, even like 2008 in the Australian Grand Prix, and Lewis won, Rosberg got on the podium, they embrace each other, because I believe that was Nico's first podium as well, ever. So they're really good friends, and now they just get to race in the same team together, work together to win and dominate in Formula One. And well, now they get to find out who's truly the better driver of the two in equal machinery. But there's one thing I want to add before we actually get into this. I'm going to be ignoring every year he won the championship already, so say 2014, 15, any other year he's actually become world champion, I'll be ignoring completely because we already know what the conclusion is, as it will just be unnecessary to go through what we know is already going to happen. So without further ado, let's get into it. Considering Red Bull did have the upper hand with a pretty dominant car in 2013, they had a brilliant car. They were clearly the best with a combination of Sebastian Vettel as well. They were almost unbeatable at times. So it's unlikely that we'll get Lewis to win a title, as Vettel did have the 9 wins in a row, literally in the second half of the season. So he won't win the title here, but let's see if he can pick out a few race wins. It was a really good start for Lewis at Mercedes. He bagged a good 2 podiums at the first 3 races and a pole position in China, and he was 4th in the championship ahead of his teammate Rosberg, who had a shocker of a start and 2 retirements by this point in the season. The first race I'm looking at is the Spanish Grand Prix, and there's nothing I can really look at until then because he was pretty solid up until the 5th round. Well, there's not really much to see because Hamilton was completely struggling on his tyres. 2013 is when the tyres were very, very soft and worn down extremely quick. It wasn't uncommon to see 3-stop, even 4-stop races. Pit stops was a big thing in 2013. So he was just struggling with his tyres. Mercedes didn't have the pace, and he finished P12. So I'm not going to bother making any changes here. You know, it's giving him like a podium when he legit finished 12th in the race. Like, it's just unfair. The next half a dozen races on paper went pretty well for Hamilton, but it doesn't. That's what it says on paper. That's not actually what the full story is though. We landed in Silverstone for the 8th round of the season. In qualifying, our boy Lewis took his 2nd pole position for Mercedes by a huge gap to his teammate. It was 0.4 of a second, but it was to his buddy Rosberg, so Mercedes front row. It looks a bit familiar, doesn't it? Lewis got away well at the start, with Vettel jumping his teammate Rosberg right at the first corner. It was all looking really good for Lewis, as he was pulling a gap to Vettel and leading the race. So it looks like he was destined to win his home race for the 2nd time. And of course, his first win for Mercedes, which he hasn't got yet. But on lap 8, disaster struck. Hamilton was going down the Wellington Straight, and it cut to a shot of him with his left rear tyre completely falling apart, exploding everywhere. And I remember being, how old would I have been? I would have been 10 years old at this time. I'm thinking, what the fuck has just happened? This is unbelievable. And I remember turning the TV off and crying. I don't know, I can't remember what I did after that. Probably played with my Legos or something. He had to go 2/3 of the track's distance to make it back to the pits, which is Silverstone is a long circuit and a high-speed one too, so lots of time was lost. When he did eventually make it back, he dropped down to plumb last, from leading to the race to 22nd in about 2 laps. He wasn't the only unlucky one, however, as many other drivers, including Massa, Verne, there's a few more I can't think of them off my head, but many drivers did have trouble with the high deck and the soft tyre compounds as well. For a high deck track, a relatively softer compound for that year, and the curbs are also causing the issue as well. I watched something brief on it, but the curbs apparently they did cause an issue for the tyres as well. It was just tearing them apart completely. So that did help Lewis out in his recovery to get back up towards the top of the field, as many drivers just simply dropped out or had to replace their tyres. And in the end, he managed to recover to 4th place, which is pretty decent, and it was only 7 seconds behind his teammate Rosberg, and he was 6 tenths behind Alonso at the line, so he's challenging for a podium, from last to a podium. That would have been pretty extraordinary. And no, I'm going to slam dunk give him this one, because he was one lead in the race. He was put on a gap to Vettel, who actually retired later on in the race, and he was 7 seconds behind his teammate Rosberg with a tyre that was flat for a good 2/3 of the lap when he had to crawl around with that. So I think he would have clearly won this race easily. And next up is the Nürburgring, and Lewis again took pole position here. You know, he was on a bit of a streak, 2 races in a row. He's looking pretty strong right now. Maybe he could challenge for a win again, but I just simply couldn't convert the pole position into a race win, as Mercedes just didn't have the pace. Hamilton finished 50 and Rosberg was a bit further down. They just weren't there. And after a mid-race safety car, after Marussia went across the track with no one in it, there was a safety car brought out. And even with 25 laps to go, he still finished 26 seconds behind the winner, Vettel. So Mercedes just had no pace this race. So no changes for the Nürburgring. Hamilton took his first actual win for Mercedes in Hungary, and well, after this, it was just Vettel, won absolutely everything. So that's 2013 concluded. And which brings up his actual tally to 22 wins, 1 title, and his alternate tally to 30 wins and 4 titles. As you know, if you haven't watched part 1, which you should have before this one, he has won 4 titles at McLaren, which is pretty crazy if things just went a little bit differently for him. 2014 brings us to the turbo hybrid era, where Mercedes become the team to beat, absolutely dominant, better than Red Bull ever were. But this year we'll be skipping because Lewis was world champion, and the same case goes for, it's the same story for 2015 as well, as he became world champion in both. So we're not going to bother, so we're going to move on straight to 2016, which is where Rosberg managed to just about better him. And honestly, this one still needs to be very brief. We just need to look at Malaysia. The Malaysian Grand Prix of 2016, when Lewis Hamilton was leading the race comfortably. Rosberg had a collision on the opening lap which dropped him down the field. Hamilton was cruising, but his engine blew up at turn 1, flames going up the exhaust, and that was his title hopes over. Yes, he was still in contention, but it was looking a lot more difficult for Lewis. And because of this blowout, Rosberg knew after the Japanese Grand Prix 4 races to go, if I just finish second in every single race, I can be world champion at Abu Dhabi. So he didn't actually need to give it everything. And say if Hamilton did win the Malaysia Grand Prix, we might have seen a better Rosberg. You know, because if Hamilton won in Malaysia, he would have been the champion mathematically, but we don't know if we would have seen a harder fight in Rosberg at the end of the season instead of just trying finishing second all the time. So we don't know how it could have really played out in the end. Rosberg could have fought harder against Hamilton in the last 4 races and could have still been the world champion, but this is something we don't know. So if I just give Lewis the win for Malaysia, he's the world champion for the first or the 3rd time it would have been for Mercedes. And it would make him a 7-time world champion in his 10th season of Formula 1, matching Michael Schumacher. It's just ridiculous. Like, how often he was there in contention, which at the end of 2016, his stats were 53 wins, 3 world titles, and his alternate stats only with 9 more wins on 62, and obviously 7-time world champion, as I said, which is crazy. The next 4 years was dominated by Lewis Hamilton as well. No one got near him apart from Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel at times. Instead of skipping his most successful seasons, I'm going to be looking at a few races just to pick a few out on where he perhaps got a bit unlucky, where he basically should have won that race. Sure, there's races you say he shouldn't have won himself, but we're not looking at it. We're trying to max out his career completely here, of course, with it trying to be relatively fair. So the first race we're going to be looking at is the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. He took pole position by half a second to his teammate Bottas and was over 1 full second ahead of both Ferraris. I think that just tells you he's just on another level. Sure, that Mercedes engine was still godly and Baku is basically just a straight line. And Lewis led every lap up until his headrest came loose. And of course he had to pit to try and fix that, and that cost him a lot of time. So And then in the end, he finished 5th behind Vettel. So it cost him a win, this headrest problem, so we'll give him that one back to him. And that was all for 2017, and even for the next 3 years, 18, 19, and 20, I couldn't find one actual legitimate reason to try and get another win in these next 3 years. As, yeah, well, in this period of time, luck was on Hamilton's side, save team orders and just general luck. He did get a bit lucky at times, of course, and with Bottas being told to move over more than once. You know, I don't like using luck as his excuse, because I don't think it was lucky that Hamilton got into Mercedes and they happened to have the best car. Was it lucky when Niki Lauda convinced Hamilton to come Mercedes? Was it lucky that Toto Wolff was there as well? Of course, he's a great team principal. Was it lucky that they developed a powerful engine to become the best team on the grid and develop this whole like unstoppable force? Was that lucky? Was it lucky that his teammate Rosberg retired in 2016, so he didn't really have a highly competitive teammate? Well, sure, Bottas is good, don't get me wrong, but a driver that's on his exact level. I believe he proved himself throughout his career from go-karting all the way in McLaren to say, yeah, that's for Toto Wolff, Niki Lauda to say, yeah, I want this driver, Lewis Hamilton, part of our Mercedes dominant program, our plan to absolutely dominate and be the unstoppable force in Formula 1 and break all the records. He was deliberately part of that plan. It wasn't luck, it was him performing well that got him into that position. And would have Toto picked Max Chilton? No, you probably wouldn't. Some of you probably don't even know who Max Chilton is. He got himself in the position to be in the best car, and, well, simply to say it, bad drivers end up in the best cars. That's just how it is, and that's just the way Formula 1 is. But I'm probably going to get screamed at by someone calling me like a Mercedes fanboy or some shit. Bro, don't do that. You're wasting your time. Don't do that. It's raining outside as well. It sounds quite lovely. It's adding some nice ambience to it. If the camera's picking up, I don't know. But I'm going to finish it off on one more season, and oh god, I'm dreading this a little bit, I can't lie. And that is, of course, 2021. I can't wait. All I need to talk about is Abu Dhabi. It's pretty simple to me. Hamilton was leading the race by a large margin to Verstappen. They were both equal on points. And once Latifi crashed, of course, the safety car came out. The rules were deliberately broken to obviously create this dead heat at the end of the race so that we could have this showdown on the final lap with the two rivals equal on points. That's what I believe this thing is, and that's just my opinion. It's simple. It was a dead heat deliberately and artificially created to have this title big finale showdown, and for it to perhaps be like some sort of media thing or something like that. I don't know, I haven't really thought that deep into it, but that's what I believe it is. A artificially created dead heat, which obviously I'm going to reverse because of that. So I'm going to say Hamilton won the race and the world title. And you know, don't get me wrong, in the moment, this was hella exciting. I am a fan of Hamilton, I'm a fan myself, if you haven't gathered already by the topic of this bloody video. But I remember being so excited about this, like this whole thing, and I was just grateful we had such an incredible season. Now Mercedes, they weren't so dominant anymore, they weren't the dominant force, someone actually beat them for the first time in 7 years. It was incredible to see, it was like a turning point in their sport, of course, which is so emotional, which is why there's such a divide and so many people deep it so much. But I'm just looking at the facts here. The rules were broken, the safety car should have crossed the line, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to say nothing about it. And of course, since 2021, Hamilton hasn't won a single thing, so there's nothing I'm going to do here. Like, what can I do? So let's compare his actual stats compared to his alternate stats here. So I think something might surprise you a little bit, to be fair. So today, of the 7th of July, he has 103 wins, or it could be 104 unless he wins in Silverstone, and 7 world titles. His alternate stats is 114 wins, which is 11 more than his current amount, which is, I thought it would be more personally, but his world titles is quite extraordinary. In this alternate crazy timeline where Hamilton literally got lucky, never unlucky at all, he managed to bag, it's fucking rainbow. He managed to bag 12 world titles, which is almost double Schumacher. And I'm not saying like Hamilton's clear better of Schumacher, blah blah blah. I'm gonna have to speak a little bit louder. The rain's getting quite heavy now, but if I'm not saying Schumacher or this Hamilton's better or this is better, I'm just saying if Hamilton's career went perfectly, everything went right, he won all the races he could have possibly won, all the titles he could have possibly legitimately won without taking the piss, this is what the numbers would be. And I think there'll be someone out there who can't handle this, so if you can't handle that, then That's your problem. This is just a bit of fun. So don't deep it, please. Don't deep it. It's really not that deep. I'd like to do this with another driver, Mayo Vettel. I think Vettel would be quite exciting. Alonso would be quite cool as well to do. But let me know if you do want to see something like that. But 114 wins, 12 world titles. I don't know how many podiums. Definitely over 200 for sure. But that's from me. That is Hamilton's career maxed out. So let me know if you want to see a different driver with this career maxing format. And yeah, that's all we're going to say, man. Take care. Hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good British Grand Prix. It'll be finished by the time I've actually got this uploaded. But yeah, take care, man. Bye-bye.